And keeping an eye on this right now is Marcy Kapturr, a Democrat. She has represented Ohio's 9th congressional district since 1983. She is the longest-serving woman in the U.S. Congress. Congresswoman Kapturr, thank you for joining us.
It's my privilege. Thank you so much. We love Canada, where I come from.
Well, it's good to hear that, because I think a lot of Canadians have been asking that question of themselves in recent months. But, I first and foremost want to get your reaction to what was unveiled by Donald Trump, because it seems to be, at least right now, that when he talks about a 10% baseline tariff on all countries doing trade with the United States, there may be an exemption here for USMCA, or as we call it here in Canada, the CUSMA compliant industries. There will be an exemption from them. What's your reaction to that?
Well, it was interesting that the list that the president held up did not have the name Canada on it. And there is a resolution that is bubbling up over in the Senate right now. I understand it's bipartisan. There may be a vote tomorrow or later tonight. I'm not sure when. That is pretty much an endorsement of Canada. So just be aware. And the president didn't really talk about Canada. Canada is our largest trading partner, and I always say our largest fair trading partner. So perhaps there needs to be communication between the leadership of Canada and the Trump administration, because initially when the president talked about Canada, he was concerned about fentanyl and the number of crossings over the border that attended to illicit drug trade. I think it's important that the president understand that most of that situation is down at the Mexican border, not the Canadian border, but he wants to have increased enforcement, and it's important that the nation of Canada communicate that to him directly.
Which I know that they have been in terms of bumping up security at the border for over these last few months. But, Canadians have been talking about how harmful a tariff war would actually be to the national economy here. I'm wondering about, when you look at the numbers, what type of impact would a tariff war, a trade war, have on the Ohio economy, on the U.S. economy?
Well, it cuts many ways. Trade, the status quo we have in our nation, where we have been in trade deficit for decades, has hollowed out the region that I represent. And when you start dealing with tariffs, it's a very blunt instrument, and you really have to know what you're doing. So it's not a question of whether we should reform trade. We should, but it has to be done very adroitly. It can't just be with a meat axe. And I think that the president has to be careful in what he does, because we can also have a ricochet effect of rising prices. And our economy is so integrated with Canada in manufacturing, in automotive, in energy, in agriculture. It's just recreation and tourism. We, as Great Lakes nations, have to be fair trade partners and continue this very wholesome relationship that we've had for many, many years. I don't know how much the president really knows about that, and he was dealing with the whole world. And for us here, of course, we have to protect jobs in North America, and we've hemorrhaged those in industrial America, agricultural America, and energy America. So it's he's walking a tightrope between trying to balance our trade accounts and deal with very unfair trade practices and some kind of balance. On the other hand, if he's careless in what he does, we'll find ourselves moving to recession and very upset markets globally, and potentially rising prices here at home, which nobody wants. So what would your advice be to the administration right now as to how to walk this tightrope to be beneficial to your country and also to Canada? And as you say, the two have been trade partners, in particular with auto, since 1965. That's right. And I think what we have to do is we have to look, I say fair trade, trade agreements that allow people to live a decent life, a fair wage, environmental standards, which we here on the continent, the North American continent at least, have achieved. And then to bring some of the other nations along. And you have to look at a bigger time horizon than 6 months or 1 year. With some countries, it will take much longer to get any kind of equity, but the president has to be careful if they apply reciprocal tariffs on us. then prices on everything are going to go up. And in our country today, it's pretty hard to find anything made in the USA on the shelves. So he's got to negotiate a very narrow band and a needle here. And with countries that we don't really have a problem like Canada, that ought to be dealt with initially very quickly, and let's get on with the business of the continent here. Stock and bond markets have been very unsteady here over the last, I would say, month and a half, not knowing what he's going to propose. So I'm glad that that's out. We know that in manufacturing America, so many of our towns, like the ones I have represented for many years, were hollowed out, and we're struggling to build back our industrial capacity. And we can do that working with Canada. What's been happening in my region, just so you know, there are billboards going up that say tariffs are taxes. And so there's a pushback already before the president even made his final proposal here. We have oil that comes over the border. We don't know how that's going to fare and what the president is proposing, but I believe in the motto, free trade among free people. And where that does not exist, then you have to deal with other externalities that affect global manufacturing and try to not penalize the people who believe in free trade among free people.
Free trade among free people. Appreciate the sentiment, Congresswoman. Thank you for this. Appreciate the time.
Thank you so very much.